Thank you guys for tuning in to Sundays with Josue, where we discuss mindset, personal branding, and content creation, as well as what is going on within my personal entrepreneurial journey. The intention of this live stream and this show is to serve as a source of education and inspiration for the future generation of entrepreneurs. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive directly into today's topic, and that is how to improve habits and by extension, your results. As you guys know, I really enjoy starting off any discussion first with definitions. So what is a habit? Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines habits as a settled tendency or usual manner of behavior. Typically, we hear this and we all intuitively know that habits relates to your behavior and the actions you take on a daily basis. However, one thing that many people do not consider about habits is the fact that they can be both things you do in reality, such as your actions you take on a daily basis, but they can also extend to also include your thought patterns. And arguably, your thought patterns are more impactful to your quality of life and what happens on a day-to-day basis than even are your actual behaviors. So that's one thing that we're going to be going and diving deeper into in the coming moments here as we go through this presentation. Now, here's a great example of how your thought patterns can manifest via your habits. The growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A growth mindset views negative occurrences as challenges. So for instance, let's say you get laid off from your job. Instead of viewing that as a life-ending circumstance or a paradigm shift, you can simply view that as an opportunity to perhaps start your own business, to perhaps go on your own entrepreneurial venture. Now, a fixed mindset is someone who believes I have started off at point A and reasons I cannot progress any further or move or grow. And just this one simple difference between individuals, a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, has actually been shown empirically to affect things such as overall life satisfaction, happiness, etc. Now that we went ahead and discussed habits from the macro, let's discuss a bit more about why they matter. Because if we're trying to change these things, we have to actually, know why they matter. So the first is habits or behavior create our lives. Spending habits, behavioral habits, sleeping patterns, etc. These things play off in a plethora of different ways that we're going to discuss in your actual daily life functioning. Now, once again, one of the things that is important to realize is that you can have thought habits and conceptual habits that happen within your brain, but oftentimes what happens is the habits that you actually have in regards to your behavior can too also shape what it is that occurs within your self-perception. So for instance, if you have the habit of going to the gym every single morning at 8 a.m. or so, and you have the habit of going for a run or reading frequently, you are more likely to perceive yourself as someone who is motivated by the gym and fitness and working out if you also are currently in real time doing those concurrent and congruent actions. And lastly, why habits matter, and this one is one of my favorite examples and favorite reasons, is that the frequency of our habits causes a compound effect. Now, if you're familiar with compounding interest, this is a great parallel where if you simply invest $5,000 annually over the course of the age of approximately 18 to 65, with interest about 7% annualized, that individual will be a millionaire by the end of the period. Habits are much the same way. Simple, small daily actions, something as simple as just choosing to eat 300 calories less a day, can make a massive impact over a given period of time, especially as you extend time periods out. And so that's one thing that makes habits so powerful, but can also be nefarious, because if you have bad habits, it can actually lead you astray and decrease your quality of life significantly. So this graphic on the right, I think, really does show this concept in a really good way. You're able to see how your choices, behavior, and habits over the course of 27 months can really make a true difference. And that's something that we're going to be discussing later on, especially in regards to the business world. So now we understand what habits are, we understand why we should care about them, but how can we go ahead and use and start to begin to leverage our habits to maximize results in our business, our daily lives, etc. This is something I've been spending a lot of time thinking about for myself personally, so I'm going to share my thoughts and hopefully help some people out there. The first of which is to have a grand why. So as we all know, the old adage of that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I argue you can teach an old dog new tricks. However, it is very, very difficult. So the first thing that's super important is to have a grand why, because the process of behavioral change is extremely difficult. And without a grand why and a real purpose behind why you are trying to make this change, the chance of failure is going to increase dramatically. So here's one example. I would like to start working out in the morning. That's one instance. You could say that, or you could say, I would like to have a healthier lifestyle so that I can be a healthier parent and be more present in the lives of my children. The latter is going to give you the thought process in the latter case is going to give you a much higher chance of adhering to your desired behavioral changes that you're trying to make in the coming days and weeks to come. And now the second thing is that your results has to be measurable. What we are able to measure, we can improve with a lot greater efficiency and likelihood of success than something that isn't measurable. So what that could look like for you in your business, in your personal life, is I want to make more friends, in a personal example. Instead of making it a generic, bland, broad statement, instead it should be, I want to meet 5 new people this week. So you can actually reverse engineer that, which is going to be which is a bit of a foreshadowing to my next point. Additionally, in business, if you want to increase, instead of saying, I want to go ahead and increase revenue, or I want to increase sales, I want to increase lead flow, add a number to it. I want to increase revenue by $50,000 this year. I want to increase lead flow by 20%. Simply adding those little pieces can make a big difference. And one of the main reasons why is that you're able to reverse engineer your goal. So I have in this third box here, Lego, layer your goal, a 3-piece combo. So it is much, much easier to achieve something when you're able to reverse engineer what exactly it is. So in the case of a salesperson, for example, if you want to increase your commission that you're taking home every day by, let's say, $10,000, and each person that you sell, you make $1,000 from, well, you simply know, okay, perfect. I simply have to sell my product to 10 more people every given month. And since we went ahead and had that goal be measurable, we can now go ahead and reverse engineer not only how many people we need to sell, but also how many leads we need to collect in order to have that based upon conversion ratio, how many people we need to convert, etc. And now let's go ahead and stack another bonus on top of that. I want to sell and earn $10,000 more in commission every single month so that I can provide for my family and have access for savings for a rainy day, as well as have money to give to the community. Using those 3 things in conjunction will give you a much higher chance of success. Hence, Lego layering your goals and making it a 3-piece combo instead of just a simple statement. Now, going on to changing old habits, because most of us, or all of us rather, at this point in our lives, we have different behaviors that we do frequently, and they could be good or bad. You know, if you were an athlete at one point, sticking to your gym habit could most likely be pretty easy because you were doing it since you were the age of 16 or so, or if not younger. But oftentimes, what we're really worried about and thinking of are the habits that we have that are negative. Perhaps it's dieting, perhaps it's thought, perhaps it's procrastination, etc. Now, habit change is difficult. Once again, you can teach an old dog new tricks, but it's going to be very hard to do so. So here are some tips and some different ways you can go about that process to help ease this process for yourself. So the first one is it all begins with self-awareness. The first step is start to ask yourself, well, where am I in regards to my business, my friends and family, my aspirations, my personal life, etc. Take inventory of where you're currently at in your life and be honest with yourself and assess those things. And then the second step from that is, well, how did I get here? What actions and what behaviors do I frequently do that have led to me being in this current position? And then here's the secret sauce. Why do I exhibit these behaviors? Oftentimes, what's more important than the what is the why. If you are a overeater, why is it that you overeat? If you are a overthinker, why is it that you overthink? If you're highly sensitive to the opinion and judgment of others, well, why is that? And the reason why that's important is that when you address the why, you can actually create long-lasting change opposed to simply having a band-aid solution. So now here are some strategies that we can go ahead and use practically to change old habits. So the first one is, and this is assuming you have completed your reflection. The first one is take accountability and create accountability systems. So The reason why we have the dunce hat here is that we have all seen in pop culture, and then maybe some people who are older in here have experienced the dunce hat phenomenon. Oftentimes, it's a much more motivating and compelling to lose something, in this case, humiliation, to lose something rather than it is to gain something. So putting yourself in a position where you have publicly declared that you are going to do a certain action and having people hold you accountable can be super powerful. And that's a mastermind. So for myself, for the month of May, and also part of the reason why I even started this live stream in the first place to talk to you guys and help you guys out through my story, is because I started a mastermind group with a friend of mine, Taylor. And we came together and said, we want to start putting out more value-based content. Taylor is a business owner and he generates leads through LinkedIn, through producing content. I myself am building my personal brand for mergers and acquisitions and different deals as I'm going to be doing for my career. And it's amazing the amount of ideas that we have exchanged and the level of output that we have both achieved through simply having accountability. And that's just with one person. So currently I'm actually building that out, but that's just an example of how you can use an accountability system and a mastermind to increase your likelihood of having a behavioral change and breaking free of an old habit. And the reason why I have synergy here is, and I love this concept, the cooperative working together of two or more people or organizations when their combined effort is greater than the sum of the individual efforts. And masterminds are able to create just that. What you'll find is that when you have two or three or more people coming together to coming together to pursue a unified goal, it's a much easier for everyone to reach that goal all at once. So we now have reflected and we have now created an accountability system for ourselves, with preferably through a mastermind, but it can be something as simple as asking a friend or family member to hold us accountable. What's the next step now? Well, the next step is persistence, because frequently when in the process of trying to make a new habit, it's very likely that you're going to fall off the bandwagon and maybe revert to your previous behavioral patterns, just because statistically, that's just how it goes. But the most important thing when this does occur, if it occurs, is to make sure that you persist and don't give up. Because how is it that you're going to create a new behavioral pattern if you stop only after 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? What we've been doing behaviorally for this point up into our lives for the past 10, 15 years, it's not going to be able to be all undone in one simple fell swoop. So be persistent. Now, the second thing is identification. And I have this picture here on the right-hand side of the individual saying, I am. And where the magic happens is when you go beyond setting a new habit into setting a new identity. Once again, instead of being someone who just wakes up every morning and runs because you're trying to build a new habit, if you've been doing it for 2-3 months, you can now say to yourself, I am a runner. And that identification is a much stickier habit than it is when you simply are doing it out of brute force and will. And this last portion is one of my personal favorites and one of my personal ethoses for myself and my goal is propagation. So if you are at the point where you have achieved a new habit, a new behavioral pattern, it is, in my opinion, your duty to go ahead and share that experience with others. Share those strategies, those tips, those things that you have done to create a new identity and to create a new behavioral pattern. Share that experience, because you never know who you may help that might be struggling, that may need that exact revelation. So now we're at this last portion. So we have the guard right here setting vigilant. So you went ahead and you assessed where you were and how you got there. You reflected, and then you took action. You identified with your new habit structure and your new behavioral pattern, and you went ahead and shared your story with others. So you're doing great. You're good for you if you made it this far. But also, you have to be highly vigilant to avoid going back to default. That's why we have this guard here. So once again, let's assume that you are pursuing and having certain habits and certain behavioral patterns for the first 16 years of your life. Neurochemically, you have a very high likelihood of going back to those behavioral patterns. Not to say it's impossible, but because of that, you have to remain vigilant and have to continue to have systems in place to continue to hold you accountable in the long haul. And so once again, we can talk about stacking systems. So using myself as an example, not only do I have my accountability partners, I also have this live stream where I'm talking about things such as mindset, business content creation. So I'm forced to walk the walk because I'm in the public eye now. And I thus am now even more accountable. So I'm accountable to my friends, my family to whom I told my goals, and also to people who are watching this both now and in the future. And lastly, continue to propagate. Continue to share your story, because once again, you never know who it will help. And also, you sharing your story reinforces those behavioral patterns. And also, the best way to learn something truly is by teaching it and talking about it in a public manner.